My daughter said, "Move to a smaller place. This house is too big for an old woman like you." I smirked and transferred the house to. When she found out, she broke into my house. Good day, dear listeners. It's Louisa again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had lived in my 3-bedroom colonial house for 37 years. Every corner held a memory. Thomas's reading chair by the window, the kitchen where I taught my daughter Margaret to bake apple pies, the garden where we planted roses each spring. After Thomas passed 2 years ago, the house felt bigger, yes, but it was still mine, still home. I was 72, healthy, independent. I drove myself to the grocery store, maintained the garden, hosted my book club every Thursday. My retirement was comfortable. Thomas had been a careful man, and we'd saved well. The house was paid off. I wanted for nothing. Margaret called every Sunday. "How are you, Mom?" she'd ask, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite name. Impatience, maybe, or calculation. "I'm wonderful, dear. I replanted the hydrangeas yesterday." A pause. "At your age? Mom, that's dangerous. What if you fell?" "I'm 72, not 92. I'm perfectly capable." Still. Another pause. It's a lot of house for one person. The first seed, planted so carefully I almost didn't notice it. The calls became more frequent. Margaret would mention retirement communities, "Just thinking ahead, Mom," or suggest I downsize. Wouldn't a nice apartment be easier? No yard work, no maintenance? "I like yard work," I said, "and I can afford a handyman if I need one. But the property taxes, the heating bills, wouldn't it be smarter to sell while the market's good?" Smarter for whom? I wondered but didn't ask. Then came the visit that changed everything. Margaret arrived on a Tuesday afternoon without calling first. She let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. This didn't seem like an emergency. "Mom, we need to talk." She stood in my living room, designer handbag on her arm, lips pressed into a thin line. "About what, dear?" "About this house. Mom, look at this place. It's huge. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a formal dining room you never use. And you're here all alone, rattling around like a ghost." "I'm not rattling anywhere. I'm living my life." "You're being stubborn." Her voice rose. "Do you know what could happen? You could fall down these stairs. You could have a medical emergency with no one around. This house is too big for one old woman like you." The words hit me like a slap. One old woman like you. I kept my face neutral, but something cold settled in my chest. "I see. I'm just worried about you." But her eyes were hard, calculating. "You should move into something smaller. Sell this place. The money could go into a managed account. Something secure. Something you could control." Her face flushed. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" She left angry, her car spitting gravel as she peeled out of the driveway. I sat in Thomas's chair and looked around my home. Too big for one old woman. The words echoed in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, pieces clicking together like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Margaret's sudden concern. Her interest in my finances. The way she'd mentioned her husband Derek losing his job last year. Just in passing. "Nothing to worry about," she'd said. The way she'd asked, just once, if I'd updated my will recently. I had updated it 6 months ago. Everything went to Margaret, of course. She was my only child. The house, the savings, the life insurance Thomas had left me. All of it to her. And now she wanted me to sell the house. Move somewhere smaller. Put the money somewhere secure. Somewhere she could access it? My daughter, I realized with a sick feeling in my stomach, was circling me like a vulture, waiting, impatient. How long had I been blind to this? I rose from bed and went to my desk. I pulled out the folder containing my will, my financial statements, the deed to the house. I spread them across the desk and studied them in the lamplight. If Margaret thought I was just one old woman, too feeble to see what she was doing, she was about to learn otherwise. I might be 72, but I wasn't anyone's fool, and I certainly wasn't going to hand over everything Thomas and I had built to a daughter who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her inheritance. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I spent the next morning at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold in my cup, surrounded by papers that told the story of my life in numbers. The house, valued at $480,000. Savings accounts totaling $340,000. Thomas's life insurance, another $200,000. Investment accounts, bonds, a small rental property Thomas had bought years ago. Over $1 million. More than enough to make someone impatient. More than enough to make my own daughter see me as an inconvenience rather than her mother. The realization hurt worse than I wanted to admit. I had changed Margaret's diapers, walked her to her first day of school, paid for her college education. I had held her hand through her divorce from her first husband, helped her plan her wedding to Derek. I had been there, always. And now? Now, I was just one old woman, standing between her and money she clearly believed she deserved. My hands trembled as I poured another cup of coffee. Fear crept up my spine. Not of Margaret exactly, but of what this meant. My daughter, my only child, had shown me her true nature. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. Could I do nothing? Pretend I hadn't noticed? Thomas hadn't raised a coward, and I wouldn't become one now. Could I confront her directly? Demand an explanation? I imagined that conversation. Margaret would cry, apologize, swear I had misunderstood. She would manipulate and gaslight until I doubted my own perceptions. I'd seen her do it to Derek, to her friends, even to me in smaller ways over the years. No direct confrontation. Not yet. I needed to be smart, strategic. I pulled a legal pad from the drawer and began to write. First, what did I know for certain? Margaret wanted me to sell the house. She was interested in my finances. She had asked about my will. Her husband was unemployed. They lived in an expensive neighborhood, drove luxury cars, maintained appearances they probably couldn't afford. Second, what did I want? To protect what Thomas and I had built. To ensure it went to someone who would value it, who would honor the work we'd put into creating it. To teach my daughter that her mother was not a fool. To make sure she understood there were consequences for treating family like assets to be liquidated. Third, what were my options? I could change my will. That was obvious. But to whom? I had no other children, no close relatives. Leaving it all to charity felt hollow. Thomas and I had built this life for family, even if that family had disappointed us. The will could change, but that alone wasn't enough. I thought about my friend Dorothy, whose son had tried something similar 5 years ago. She'd caught him forging her signature on a loan application. She'd handled it quietly, cleverly. She'd given him exactly what he deserved, nothing. But she'd done it in a way that made him understand the depth of his mistake. An idea began to form. What if I gave Margaret exactly what she was asking for? What if I moved out of this too big house, but not into a retirement home, not into some manageable apartment where I'd be out of the way and eventually forgotten? What if I gave the house to someone else entirely? Someone who deserved it? Someone whose life it would actually change? I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name. James Richardson. James was my gardener's son, 28 years old, married to a sweet girl named Amy, with a baby on the way. He worked as a teacher. She was a nurse. They were saving for a house, but in this market, on their salaries, they were years away from affording anything. Good people. Kind people. The kind of people Thomas and I had been when we were young and struggling. I had watched James grow up. I'd given him his first job mowing my lawn when he was 14. He'd checked on me weekly since Thomas died. Not because he wanted anything, but because he cared. What would Margaret's face look like when she discovered I'd given the house, her inheritance, to my gardener's son? The thought made me smile for the first time in days, but I had to be careful. This couldn't look impulsive or manipulated. It had to be legal, documented, ironclad. Margaret would challenge it, I had no doubt. She'd claim I wasn't of sound mind, that James had taken advantage of me. I needed to protect this decision before I made it. I needed a lawyer, a good one. I reached for my phone again, this time calling Robert Chen, the attorney who had handled Thomas's estate. If anyone could help me do this right, it was Robert. Robert, it's Eleanor Harper. I need to schedule an appointment. Something delicate. Of course, Eleanor. Is everything all right? Everything, I said, looking at the papers spread across my table, is about to be exactly right. Robert Chen's office was downtown, in one of those old brick buildings that had been converted into modern spaces while keeping their historic charm. I appreciated that, the balance between honoring the past and moving forward. It felt appropriate. Eleanor, it's good to see you. Robert stood as his secretary showed me in. He was in his mid-50s, graying at the temples, with the careful manner of someone who had seen enough family disputes to know they rarely ended well. Though I admit, your call concerned me. Is this about updating your estate plan? In a manner of speaking. I sat across from his desk, my purse in my lap, hands steady despite the hammering of my heart. I want to change my will, completely. Robert's expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of interest in his eyes. I see. May I ask why? The current will is solid, and you executed it just 6 months ago. Circumstances have changed. What kind of circumstances? I told him. Everything. Margaret's pressure to sell the house, her sudden interest in my finances, the comment about me being one old woman. I kept my voice level, factual, but I saw Robert's jaw tighten. And you're certain this is her motivation, not genuine concern? Robert, I've been a mother for 47 years. I know the difference between worry and greed. He nodded slowly. What do you want to do? I want to give my house to James Richardson, my gardener's son. He's a good young man. Teacher, married, baby on the way. They're exactly the kind of people Thomas and I were at that age. I want to help them the way we wished someone had helped us. And the rest of your estate? Set up a trust for James's child. My savings can fund their education, give them opportunities. Margaret still gets the rental property and $20,000. Enough to show I haven't cut her out entirely, but not enough to reward her behavior. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor, you know Margaret will contest this. She'll claim undue influence, that James manipulated you, which is why I need you to make this bulletproof. I want a full mental competency evaluation. I want everything documented. I want it so legally sound that no judge would even consider overturning it. That kind of evaluation takes time, and it's not cheap. I have time, and I have money. What I don't have is patience for my daughter treating me like an ATM with a heartbeat. Robert smiled, just a small one, but it was there. Let me make some calls. Dr. Patricia Walsh is the best psychiatric evaluator in the state. If she certifies your competency, no one will question it. Set it up. There's one more thing. Robert leaned forward. Have you considered telling Margaret about this? Sometimes the threat of being disinherited is enough to— No. My voice was firm. She made her choice when she called me a burden. I'm making mine now. She can find out when the will is read. Over the next 2 weeks, I underwent the most thorough mental evaluation of my life. Dr. Walsh was a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who asked me everything from basic memory questions to complex ethical scenarios. She had me do puzzles, recall stories, explain my reasoning for the will change. Mrs. Harper, she said at our final session, you are quite possibly the most mentally acute 72-year-old I've evaluated. Your decision-making capacity is excellent, your memory is sharp, and your reasoning is sound. If your daughter tries to claim incompetence, she'll have a very hard time with my report. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. May I ask, are you sure about this? Family estrangement is painful. More painful than being seen as an obstacle to inheritance? She smiled sadly. Fair point. But Margaret wasn't stupid. She sensed something. The calls increased. Suddenly, she was visiting every few days, always with the same refrain. Mom, have you thought about what I said? About the house? I've thought about it, I said carefully. And? I'm handling it. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Are you listing it? Have you found a place? I said I'm handling it, Margaret. You're being secretive. Why are you being secretive? Because you're circling like a shark, I thought. Because I can see the calculation in your eyes every time you look at my furniture, my artwork, my possessions. I'm not being secretive. I'm being private. There's a difference. She left angry, again. But this time, I saw something else in her face. Worry. She knew something had shifted. She just didn't know what. 2 days later, Robert called. Eleanor, the evaluation is complete. Dr. Walsh's report is glowing. We're ready to execute the new will whenever you are. But I have to warn you, Margaret called my office yesterday, asking if you'd been in contact with me. My heart skipped. What did you tell her? Nothing. Attorney-client privilege. But she's suspicious. You might want to move quickly. How quickly can we do this? Tomorrow morning, if you can be here at 9. I'll be there. I hung up and looked around my living room. Tomorrow, this house would legally belong to James Richardson. Margaret would get exactly what she deserved. Almost nothing. And I would sleep soundly for the first time in weeks. I signed the new will at 9:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Robert had 2 witnesses, his paralegal and a notary public. They watched as I initialed each page, signed my name on the final document. My hand didn't shake once. It's done, Robert said, placing the will in a sealed envelope. I'll file it with the county clerk this afternoon. The deed transfer for the house will take a few more days, but legally, as of this moment, your estate plan has changed. Thank you, Robert. Eleanor? He hesitated. Be prepared. When Margaret finds out, it won't be pleasant. I know. I had planned to tell James about the house in person, but I wanted the legal work completely finished first. The deed transfer, the title insurance, every detail locked down. Robert said another week, maybe 2. Margaret gave me 3 days. She arrived on Sunday afternoon with Derek in tow. I saw them through the window, her face twisted with fury, Derek looking uncomfortable, reluctant. She didn't knock. She used her key and barged in like a storm. What the hell have you done? She was screaming before she even reached the living room. What have you done? I stood from my chair, calm. Lower your voice, Margaret. Lower my... She was shaking with rage. I got a call from Linda Pearson. Her husband works at the county clerk's office. She said you filed a new will. She said you're giving this house away. So that's how she'd found out. Small town gossip. I should have anticipated that. What I do with my property is my business. Your property? This is my inheritance. Dad built this for our family. Your father built this for a family that cared about more than money. You senile old fool. She stepped closer, her finger jabbing toward my face. You can't do this. I won't let you. Derek. She turned to her husband. Tell her. Tell her she's lost her mind. Derek at least had the decency to look ashamed. Margaret, maybe we should calm down. Don't you dare take her side. She's giving away $500,000 to some random gardener. James Richardson is not random. He's a good man who has shown me more kindness in the past 2 years than you have. Because he wants your money. God, Mom, can't you see he's manipulating you? The only person who has tried to manipulate me, I said, my voice cold and level, is standing in my living room screaming at me. Margaret's face went white, then red. You're going to regret this. I'll fight it. I'll get a lawyer. I'll prove you're incompetent. I've already been evaluated by Dr. Patricia Walsh. She's the best psychiatric evaluator in the state. She found me completely competent. You can try to contest the will, Margaret, but you'll lose. And it will cost you whatever relationship we have left. We don't have a relationship. You just proved that. Tears were streaming down her face now, angry tears, frustrated tears. How could you do this to me? I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother, not your retirement plan. Derek, we're leaving. She turned on her heel. But this isn't over, Mother. I promise you, this isn't over. You want to die alone in this house? Fine. But when you fall down those stairs, when you have a heart attack with no one around, don't expect me to come running. You made your choice. So did you, Margaret. When you called me one old woman, when you decided I was more valuable to you dead than alive. She froze in the doorway. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Shame? Regret? But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Let's go, Derek. They left. The door slammed so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I sank into Thomas's chair, my legs suddenly weak. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. I had known it would be ugly. I had prepared for it. But knowing and experiencing are different things. My daughter had threatened me, had wished, essentially, for my death, had made it clear that without the inheritance, I meant nothing to her. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling hollow. Finally, I picked up the phone and called Dorothy. Eleanor, what's wrong? You sound shaken. Can you come over? I need a friend. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dorothy arrived with tea and cookies and a fierce hug. I told her everything. The confrontation, the threats, the look in Margaret's eyes. You did the right thing, Dorothy said firmly. That girl needed to learn she can't treat people like possessions. I know, but it still hurts. Of course it does. She's your daughter. But Eleanor, some people don't understand love until they lose it. Maybe this will wake her up. Or maybe it won't. Then that's on her, not you. I took the next few days for myself. I didn't answer Margaret's calls, and there were many. I didn't read her texts. I tended my garden, had lunch with Dorothy and the book club ladies, went to the movies alone one afternoon. I needed to remember who I was beyond being Margaret's mother. I needed to remember my own worth. By Wednesday, I felt steadier, stronger, and ready for whatever came next. The letter came on Thursday, hand-delivered, slipped through my mail slot. Expensive stationery, Margaret's handwriting. Mom, I'm sorry for how I reacted. I was shocked and hurt, and I said things I didn't mean. Can we please talk? Really talk. I miss you. I miss us. Please call me. Love, Margaret. I read it twice, sitting at my kitchen table. The words were right. The tone was right. If I hadn't spent the last month watching my daughter's true nature reveal itself, I might have believed it. But I had learned to see the manipulation beneath the sentiment. She missed what exactly? Our relationship or her inheritance? I set the letter aside and didn't call. 2 days later, flowers arrived. A massive bouquet, roses, lilies, hydrangeas. The card read, "Thinking of you. I love you, Mom. M." I put them in a vase but felt nothing. On Sunday, Derek came alone. I saw him from the window getting out of his car, looking nervous. When he knocked, I answered. "Derek." "Eleanor, please, just 5 minutes. Can I come in?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat in the living room, him on the sofa, me in Thomas's chair. A safe distance. "Margaret doesn't know I'm here," he said. "She'd kill me if she knew." "Then why come?" "Because this is eating her alive. She can't sleep, can't eat. She's obsessed with it. And I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Derek." Margaret made herself very clear. "She's just scared. We're in a tight spot financially, and she was counting on—" He stopped, realizing how that sounded. Counting on my death? Or at least my compliance? He flinched. "That's not fair. Isn't it? Derek, be honest with me. How much debt are you in?" His silence was answer enough. "How much?" I pressed. "60,000 in credit cards, 140,000 in a home equity loan. Derek Jr.'s college fund is empty. We borrowed from it 2 years ago. And I lost my job 14 months ago, not last year like Margaret told you. I've been doing contract work, but it's not enough." So it was worse than I'd thought. Much worse. "And you thought pressuring me to sell my house, to hand over my savings, would solve your problems?" "No. I mean, Margaret thought." He ran his hands through his hair. "God, this sounds terrible." "Because it is terrible. Eleanor, please. I know what Margaret said was wrong. I know how it sounded. But she's desperate. We're desperate. If you could just maybe give us a loan, we'd pay you back, I swear." There it was. The real reason for this visit. Not reconciliation. Not genuine remorse. Just another attempt to access my money. "No, Derek. Please. No." I stood. "This conversation is over. You need to leave." "Eleanor, if you don't help us, we're going to lose our house. Margaret's going to have a breakdown. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said, walking to the door and opening it, "is for my daughter and her husband to take responsibility for their own choices. You live beyond your means. You make reckless financial decisions. And now you expect me to bail you out by sacrificing my own security and dignity. We're family." "Then act like it. Family doesn't circle like vultures. Family doesn't call their mother a burden. Family doesn't threaten and manipulate." "You're making a mistake. A huge mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing this sooner. Goodbye, Derek." He left, angry and empty-handed. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. But beneath the anxiety was something else. Strength. Certainty. I had not wavered. I had not been tempted by guilt or manipulation. I called Dorothy again. "Another visit?" she asked. Derek, this time, came to beg for a loan. "Jesus, Eleanor, these people have no shame." "Apparently not. How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected." "But Dorothy, I think I need more than just your support. I think I need witnesses. People who can verify I'm of sound mind, that I'm not being coerced, that I'm making these decisions clearly and freely." "What are you thinking?" "A small gathering. You, the book club ladies, Maybe Pastor Williams from church. Robert Chen, my lawyer. I want people to see me, to spend time with me, to know beyond doubt that I'm competent and clear-headed. I think that's brilliant. Can you help me organize it? Consider it done. The following Saturday, I hosted a luncheon. 8 people. Friends, my pastor, my lawyer. We ate, we laughed, we discussed books and current events and gardening. Robert casually brought up estate planning, and I explained, calmly and clearly, why I had made my decisions. No one questioned my reasoning. Several people praised it. Your daughter should be ashamed, said Helen from book club. Treating you like that. Some children forget their parents are people with their own lives and rights, Pastor Williams added. You're doing the right thing, Eleanor. By the end of the afternoon, I had what I needed. A room full of witnesses who could testify, if necessary, that I was fully competent, acting of my own free will, and making rational decisions. Margaret and Derek, I knew, were somewhere watching, waiting, planning their next move, but I was ready. Let them come. They came on a Tuesday evening, just after sunset. I was reading in the living room when I heard the key in the lock. Margaret still hadn't returned it, apparently. Mom? Margaret's voice was honey-sweet. Are you home? I set down my book. You can't just let yourself in whenever you want, Margaret. I know, I'm sorry, We brought dinner as a peace offering. She appeared in the doorway, Derek behind her carrying bags from Angelo's, my favorite Italian restaurant. We want to talk, Derek added, calmly, like adults. Every instinct screamed danger, but I was curious to see what approach they'd take this time. Fine, but only because you brought food. We sat at the dining room table, the formal one Margaret had claimed I never used. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek unpacked containers, chicken parmigiana, Caesar salad, garlic bread. My favorites. They'd done their homework. Mom, I owe you an apology. Margaret's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. Maybe she had. I've been horrible, selfish. I was so focused on our money problems that I forgot what really matters. You. Our relationship. I appreciate you saying that. And you're right. You should do whatever you want with your house, your money, your life. It's not my business. I raised an eyebrow. This was too easy, too smooth. That's quite a change from last week. I talked to my therapist. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. She made me see how toxic my behavior was, how I was letting stress turn me into someone I'm not. You're seeing a therapist now? Started last week after our fight. It really opened my eyes. Derek nodded supportively, playing his part perfectly. I'm glad you're getting help, I said carefully. So I was thinking, maybe we could start over? Fresh slate? Margaret reached across the table, taking my hand. I don't care about the will. I don't care about the house. I just want my mom back. The words were perfect. The delivery was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed her. But I did know better. That's very generous of you, Margaret. So you'll reconsider about the will? There it was. Less than 5 minutes into her apology. No. Her smile froze. What? I said no. The will stays as it is. But I just apologized. I'm in therapy. What more do you want from me? I want you to mean it, but you don't. You're still playing games, Margaret. I'm not. You show up unannounced with my favorite food, tears perfectly timed, story perfectly rehearsed. I don't care about the will, except you asked about it within minutes. Did you really think I'd fall for this? The mask cracked. Her face hardened, tears drying instantly. You know what? I tried. I really tried. She stood abruptly. But you're impossible. You're cruel. You're punishing me for being honest about our financial situation. I'm protecting myself from a daughter who sees me as a wallet. That's not true. God, Mom, why can't you see that Derek and I are drowning? We're about to lose everything. Then get a job, Derek. Cut your expenses, Margaret. Sell one of your luxury cars. But don't expect me to fund your lifestyle. Our lifestyle? Margaret laughed bitterly. You mean wanting to keep a roof over our heads? Wanting to send Derek Jr. to college? You borrowed from your son's college fund to buy a boat, Margaret. Don't play the victim with me. She went very still. How did you know about that? Derek told me. Last week, when he came begging for a loan. Margaret turned on her husband, fury blazing. You what? I was trying to help. You idiot! I told you to stay away from her. So this whole dinner, I said quietly, this whole apology, it was planned? Rehearsed? Margaret turned back to me, and now the mask was completely gone. This was her real face, desperate, angry, calculating. What if it was? What if we did plan it? We're fighting for our lives here, Mom. You're sitting on over $1 million while your daughter and grandson are about to be homeless. What kind of mother does that? The kind who taught her daughter that actions have consequences. You're heartless, you know that? You're a heartless old woman who's going to die alone in this house with nobody who loves you. Maybe, but I'll die with my dignity intact. Can you say the same? Margaret grabbed her purse, face twisted with rage. This isn't over. I'll contest the will. I'll get a doctor to say you're incompetent. I'll drag this through court for years if I have to. Try it. I have Dr. Walsh's evaluation. I have witnesses. I have documentation. All you have is greed. Derek, we're leaving. They stormed out, leaving the Italian food congealing on the table. I sat alone in the dining room, hands shaking. My heart raced, adrenaline flooding my system. For a moment, just a moment, I felt afraid. Margaret had sounded desperate enough to do something drastic, but then I thought of James and Amy, saving every penny for a house they might never afford. I thought of their baby, due in 3 months, who deserved a stable home. I thought of Thomas, who had always said, "Do what's right, Eleanor, even when it's hard." The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became resolve. Margaret could threaten all she wanted. I wasn't backing down. The legal letter arrived 3 weeks later. Margaret had hired Arthur Pemberton, the most expensive, most aggressive attorney in the county. The letter outlined their intention to contest the will on grounds of diminished mental capacity and undue influence. I called Robert immediately. I was expecting this, he said. Don't worry, Eleanor, we're prepared. When's the hearing? Judge Morrison set it for next month, November 15th. November 15th. The same date Thomas and I had gotten married 50 years ago. Margaret knew that. She'd chosen it deliberately. Another manipulation, trying to make me feel guilty for ruining our anniversary. It didn't work. I spent the next 4 weeks preparing. Robert coached me. Dr. Walsh reviewed my evaluations, and I gathered character witnesses. The book club ladies, Pastor Williams, Dorothy, even my doctor of 20 years, all ready to testify to my competence. James Richardson, bless him, was horrified when he found out what was happening. Mrs. Harper, I never wanted to cause problems with your family, he said when I finally told him about the house. If this is going to tear you and Margaret apart, Margaret did that herself, James. You're just the beneficiary of her greed. But maybe I shouldn't accept. You will accept. You and Amy need this house. Your baby needs a home. That matters more to me than appeasing a daughter who only wants me for my money. The courtroom was exactly as cold and impersonal as I expected. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Margaret sat at the plaintiff's table with Derek and Arthur Pemberton, all three in expensive suits. I sat with Robert, wearing the pearls Thomas had given me on our 25th anniversary. "This court is convened to hear the matter of Harper versus Harper," Judge Morrison began. "Ms. Margaret Patterson is contesting her mother's will on grounds of diminished capacity and undue influence. Mr. Pemberton, you may proceed." Pemberton was smooth, I'd give him that. He painted a picture of a vulnerable elderly woman, recently widowed, isolated, preyed upon by a young man who had wormed his way into her affections through yard work and false kindness. Mrs. Harper is 72 years old, living alone in a house too large for her needs. She is, by her own daughter's account, increasingly forgetful, confused, and susceptible to manipulation. The defendant, James Richardson, saw an opportunity and exploited it. It was all lies, but Pemberton made it sound plausible. Then he called Margaret to the stand. "Ms. Patterson, can you describe your mother's mental state over the past year?" Margaret dabbed at her eyes, those practiced tears again. "She's been declining, forgetting appointments, repeating herself, getting confused about dates. I was worried about her living alone." "And when did you learn about the will change?" "Through a friend. Mom didn't even tell me herself. That's when I knew something was wrong. My mother would never do something like this if she was thinking clearly." "Why do you believe Mr. Richardson influenced your mother?" "He's been at the house constantly, doing projects that weren't necessary. Mom started talking about him like family, saying he cared about her more than I did. It was like he brainwashed her." Robert stood. "Objection. Speculation." "Sustained," Judge Morrison said. But the damage was done. Margaret had planted the seed. Then Robert called me to the stand. I walked up calmly, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, looked directly at the judge. "Mrs. Harper," Robert began, "do you understand why we're here today?" "Yes. My daughter is claiming I'm not competent to manage my own affairs." "And how do you respond to that?" "It's false. I am fully competent, fully aware, and I made my decisions with complete clarity." "Can you tell the court why you changed your will?" This was the moment. The truth laid bare. "Because my daughter told me I was one old woman, living in a house too big for me. Because she pressured me to sell my home so she could access my money. Because when I refused, she became angry and threatening. Because I realized she didn't see me as her mother. She saw me as an obstacle to her inheritance." Margaret half rose from her seat. "That's not—" "Sit down, Ms. Patterson," Judge Morrison snapped. I continued, my voice steady. "I gave the house to James Richardson because he is a kind, hard-working young man who has shown me genuine care without expecting anything in return. He and his wife are having a baby and struggling to afford a home. I wanted to help them the way I wish someone had helped me and my late husband when we were young." "And were you coerced or influenced by Mr. Richardson in any way?" "No. He didn't even know about the will change until after the legal papers were filed." Robert then called Dr. Walsh, who testified about my mental evaluations. Sharp memory, clear reasoning, no signs of cognitive decline. He called Pastor Williams, who spoke about my active participation in church committees. He called Dorothy, Helen, my doctor, all testifying to my competence. Finally, he called James Richardson himself. James was nervous, but honest. "I never asked Mrs. Harper for anything. I mowed her lawn because my dad did before me. I checked on her because I care about her. When she told me about the house, I was shocked. I tried to refuse, but she insisted." "Why do you think she chose you?" Robert asked. "Because she's a good person who wants to help people who need it, not people who demand it." "Perfect." Pemberton tried to cross-examine, tried to find holes, but there were none. The evidence was overwhelming. Judge Morrison called a brief recess, then returned with her decision. I've reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and examined Dr. Walsh's evaluation. Mrs. Harper is clearly of sound mind. Her will is valid. This contest is dismissed. Margaret's face went white. No, Your Honor, please. Ms. Patterson, your mother has every right to distribute her estate as she sees fit. This court will not override her clearly expressed wishes. Case dismissed. The gavel came down. Margaret stood frozen, disbelief and rage warring on her face. Derek looked like he might be sick. I stood, collected my purse, and walked past them without a word. Outside the courtroom, James was waiting with Amy. Mrs. Harper, his voice broke. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Take care of that house, James. Fill it with love and laughter. That's all the thanks I need. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. Justice, it seemed, still existed. The house transfer was finalized on December 3rd. James and Amy moved in 2 weeks later, just before Christmas. I helped them unpack, showed Amy where I'd kept the kitchen utensils, told James about the finicky basement light that needed jiggling. This doesn't feel real, Amy said, tears in her eyes. 3 months ago, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, wondering how we'd afford a crib. Now we have a house. A real house. You have a home, I corrected. There's a difference. I had moved into a lovely 2-bedroom condo closer to downtown. Smaller, yes, but perfect for me. Modern kitchen, walking distance to shops and restaurants, a balcony where I could grow herbs. I didn't need 3 bedrooms and a yard. I needed a space that fit my life now, not the life I'd lived with Thomas. Margaret didn't attend the housewarming party James and Amy threw. She didn't call on Christmas. When her birthday came in January, I sent a card with a check for $500. Because I was still her mother, even if she refused to be my daughter. She cashed the check. She didn't send a thank you note. But I heard things. Small towns talk. And Dorothy had friends who had friends. Margaret and Derek had lost their house. The foreclosure went through in February. They moved into a small rental across town. 2 bedrooms, no yard, nothing like the luxury they'd pretended they could afford. Derek took a job managing a hardware store. 40 hours a week, middle-class salary, health insurance. Honest work. Margaret got a job too, retail at a department store. The same store where she used to shop, spending money she didn't have on clothes she didn't need. Derek Jr., their son, called me once. He was 19, home from community college. They couldn't afford the university he'd been attending. Grandma, it's Derek Jr. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? I'm okay. I wanted you to know I don't blame you for what happened with Mom. You don't? She told me you cut her out of the will because you were senile and some guy manipulated you. But then I talked to Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Chen, and he told me the truth about what Mom said to you, what she tried to do. My throat tightened. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this. I'm not. I needed to see who my parents really were. They lived on credit cards and lies, Grandma. They borrowed from my college fund for a boat they used twice. Did you know that? Your father mentioned it. Mom's angry all the time now. She blames you. She blames Mr. Richardson. She blames everyone but herself. But I see it differently. You taught her a lesson she needed to learn, that you can't treat people like ATMs. I blinked back tears. That's very mature of you. I'm taking business classes at the community college, working part-time, saving money, doing it right this way, you know? Without handouts or shortcuts. Your grandfather would be proud. Could I visit you sometime? I miss you. Oh, sweetheart, anytime. Please. He visited the following week. We had lunch, talked about his classes, his plans. He met James and Amy, held their baby girl, Emma, born healthy and perfect in February. "This could have been my inheritance," he said, looking around the house. "But honestly, this is better. That baby gets a good home, you get peace, and I get to learn how to actually earn things instead of just expecting them." After he left, I sat in my condo, looking at the photo he'd given me. Him at community college, smiling, genuinely happy. Margaret had lost everything she'd schemed for. The house, the money, her dignity. And now, it seemed, even her son's respect. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that greed had poisoned my daughter so thoroughly that she couldn't see what she'd lost until it was gone. But I also felt something else. Peace. I had done the right thing. I had protected what Thomas and I built. I had helped a deserving young family. I had shown my grandson that integrity matters more than money. And I had proven that one old woman could stand up for herself against manipulation and greed. Thomas would have approved. In April, I received a letter from Margaret. No return address, but I knew her handwriting. "Mom, I hate you for what you did. But Derek Jr. says I should forgive you, that I need to take responsibility. I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never be. But I want you to know I'm trying, really trying, to be better, to understand where I went wrong. Maybe someday we can talk. Maybe not. Margaret." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a beginning. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and went about my day. Some wounds heal quickly. Others take time. I had time. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and possibilities. My condo balcony garden flourished. Tomatoes, basil, rosemary. I had joined a pottery class at the senior center, made new friends, rediscovered hobbies I'd abandoned during my years of caretaking. My book club met at different homes now, rotating hosts, but they still called me the founding member and always saved me the best seat. On Thursdays, Dorothy and I went to matinee movies. On Sundays, I had brunch with Pastor Williams and his wife. James and Amy's daughter, Emma, turned 6 months old. They invited me over constantly. Sunday dinners, backyard barbecues, quiet afternoons where I'd rock Emma while Amy napped. I wasn't her grandmother by blood, but I was her grandmother by choice. And that meant more. "She loves you more than her own grandparents," Amy laughed one afternoon, watching Emma coo in my arms. "Well, I'm here. That's the difference." James had painted the house. Soft yellow with white trim, exactly as I'd suggested. The garden bloomed with the roses I'd planted years ago. They'd added a swing set in the backyard, preparing for when Emma could use it. "We're thinking about adopting," Amy confided one evening. "We always wanted a big family, and with the house paid off, we can afford it. Thomas and I always wanted more children," I said softly. "It didn't work out for us, but I'm so glad it will for you." My retirement account had grown. Without the expense of the big house, my costs had dropped dramatically. I donated generously to the women's shelter downtown, to the food bank, to literacy programs. Money I would have left to Margaret now helped dozens of people. That felt right. Derek Jr. visited monthly. He'd found a girlfriend, a smart, grounded girl studying engineering. They were both working and going to school, building lives brick by brick without shortcuts. "How are your parents?" I asked carefully during one visit. He sighed. "Mom's still angry. She barely speaks to me because I won't take her side. Dad's doing better. He actually seems happier working at the hardware store than he ever did in corporate. But they're struggling. Financially and emotionally. They're not good at being poor, Mom especially. She sees her old friends at the mall, shopping with money they actually have, and she can't handle it." "And you?" "I'm okay, Grandma. Better than okay. I'm learning what really matters." Through Dorothy's network, I heard the complete picture of Margaret's life now. The rental house was in a rough neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, thin walls. Margaret's BMW had been repossessed. She drove a 15-year-old Honda now. The designer clothes had been sold on consignment. The country club membership, the spa treatments, the lavish lifestyle, all gone. Margaret worked 40 hours a week in retail, coming home with sore feet and a bruised ego. Her former friends had dropped her. Apparently, friendships built on shopping trips and status didn't survive poverty. Derek managed the hardware store competently but humbly. He'd stopped drinking, couldn't afford it anymore, and had lost 20 pounds from stress. He looked older, worn, but also somehow more real. They were, I heard, in marriage counseling. Whether it would save their relationship or simply help them separate peacefully remained to be seen. Margaret had sent 2 more letters over the months. Neither contained apologies, but both showed cracks in her armor. "Mom, I got promoted to assistant manager. It's not much, but it's something." And later, Derek Jr. brought his girlfriend to meet us. "She's nice, practical, nothing like me. Maybe that's good." I responded to each letter with brief, neutral notes. I wasn't ready to forgive completely, but I wasn't closed to the possibility either. One afternoon in late May, I was having tea on my balcony when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Harper? This is Linda Chen from County Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for Margaret Patterson." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "She's fine. She collapsed at work from exhaustion, dehydration, low blood sugar, stress. We're keeping her overnight for observation, but she's asking for you." I sat very still, tea cooling in my cup. Margaret had pushed me away, threatened me, tried to destroy me legally. She'd chosen money over our relationship, but she was still my daughter, and she was asking for me. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. As I drove to the hospital, I thought about Thomas. "Do what's right, Eleanor," he'd always said. "Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." I didn't know if Margaret and I would ever repair our relationship completely. I didn't know if she'd truly changed or if this was just another crisis. But I knew this. I would show up. Because that's what mothers do. Even when their daughters forget how. I learned 3 truths from this journey. First, love without boundaries becomes enablement. Second, your worth isn't measured by your usefulness to others. Third, sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices. Margaret and I are rebuilding slowly. She's learning. I'm healing. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret choosing dignity over manipulation. What would you have done in my place? Would you have given in to keep the peace? Or stood your ground? Your life, your rules. Never forget that. Thank you for listening to my story.